Welcome to this very exciting episode. It is a solo episode where I get to interview Georgia Sheehan, who is a Commonwealth Games gold medalist and, even more notably in my books, a recent contributor to Vogue magazine with her personal essay titled Almost Olympian that she experienced only a few weeks ago as she missed out on her Paris Olympics dreams by just half a point. Even if you have no aspirations of being a professional athlete, this episode is a must listen for anyone who has dedicated their life to achieving big goals, which I know are the listeners of this podcast. I connected with Georgia through Instagram when I discovered that she was actually a fan herself of the Not So Kind Regards podcast, because on top of being a professional Australian athlete, she is a marketing girly putting to use her university degree. This episode, it is a must listen. In this episode, Georgia and we go down the rabbit hole of mindset, how to overcome what happens when literally your worst fears come true. And she shares some really valuable mindset tools and techniques that she has cultivated through access to world-class sports psychologists over the last 10 years of being a professional springboard diver. We cover topics such as visualization techniques, resilience after setbacks, and so much more. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode and let me know what you think. Welcome to the Not So Kind Regards podcast. I'm Maddy Birdcage.
And I'm Caroline Moss.
We are done with the digital fluff and pleasantries.
And we're here to talk straight about brand building, digital marketing, and personal growth.
This episode is of course brought to you by Birdcage Marketing, the forward-thinking business growth and digital marketing brand that started this all. If you are a small, medium, or large-size business, don't know how to get started, or need to tighten up your digital marketing efforts, we are currently taking on new strategy and virtual marketing manager clients. Let us shape your strategy, give you the action steps you need to implement, and then hold your hand as you and or your team implement the exact process that will take you from where you are now to where you want to be. To get started, book your discovery call at birdcagemarketing.com.au, and let's do this. Now, back to the episode. Georgia, thank you so much for joining me on the Not So Kind Regards podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for all of the listeners out there, why don't you give us a rundown of who the hell you are?
Okay, sure. Well, my name's Georgia and I am an Australian springboard diver. So I've been on the Australian diving team since I was 14 years old and I'm 24 now. So I've been at it for a really long time, and that's pretty much my story. I'm a full-time athlete, part-time social media manager to support my training and my lifestyle. And that's all you really need to know about me.
And you're based in Melbourne, correct?
Yes, based in Melbourne. I'm a Queensland girl originally, so I actually am from Brisbane. Yeah. So I grew up here and I only moved to Melbourne at the start of 2022 to change coaches for my sport and just kind of live in a new city. Melbourne's huge, and Brisbane's not a small town, but it's smaller than a big city. So thought I'd give something new a go.
Yeah, I've always thought I'd never been to Brisbane until I moved to Mackay, but I love Brisbane, but I call it like a big town.
Yes,
is the best way to say it.
Which knows everyone.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it is perfect for someone like me. I grew up in the northern beaches of Sydney. So it was like we were connected to the city, but we didn't like to go into the city a whole lot. So I feel like Brisbane gives me the right amount of city life. And then Melbourne is just a completely different story.
I feel like Melbourne's a bit of a mini London, I always say.
Yeah.
So the weather, the people, the vibe. So I definitely love it, but I do miss the sunshine occasionally.
Yeah, for sure. So you were recently interviewed by Vogue. That's a life goal hit right there. But the subject of the interview is maybe a little bit painful, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I wasn't actually interviewed. I actually wrote an article. So it's like 99.5% my words, which was really, really exciting. Of course, Vogue, read it and edited it very slightly just to align with their readership a little bit more. But basically, recently I missed out on qualifying for the Paris Olympic Games by a very, very small margin, kind of the smallest of margins possible in my sport. And I decided to write an article about it. So originally it kind of started as a little bit of a therapy letter to myself, but I did actually share it with my dad to read. And as soon as he read it, it kind of brought him to tears. And I think his words were, you need to publish this because I think there's so many other athletes out there in your position who have either just missed out or maybe families of athletes, parents, friends of athletes who maybe don't understand, what the people or the almost Olympians, as I call it, are going through right now. And I think this would be a really great piece to share. So yeah, I kind of sat down and made a list of maybe 20 publications that I thought hoped would, be interested in it. And I shot for the stars first with Vogue, and they got back to me within 5 minutes saying, yeah, we'd love to publish a version of this. So it was really, really exciting.
That's amazing. So what I would love to do, because obviously springboarding and marketing is quite far apart on the spectrum. The reason why I really wanted to get you on the podcast was, number one, you are actually a marketer
Yes.
I guess that's your side hustle at this
pretty
point.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get paid a full-time salary in any Olympic sports. Most Olympic sports don't. Potentially swimming, but a lot of that comes from sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have to find something to support yourself, and marketing, digital marketing, social media is such a great career to choose as an athlete because it is flexible and you can do it remotely as well. For if I go away to a competition for a week or two, that's totally fine. I don't have to stop working. So yeah.
I never even thought of the fact, because I look at, it was always flexible for me with like a family and stuff. But yeah, to have to be a professional athlete as well. It's like, yeah, you need something
I'm surprised
flexible, right?
Athletes don't do it. I guess it is pretty common for a lot of athletes. A lot of them go into something like sports science, exercise science. But a lot of them are quite, not in a bad way at all. They just love sport. And while I love my sport, I'm not actually a huge sport head. So it just doesn't interest me a lot.
Yeah.
I would love to do broadcasting or something along those lines, but I definitely love the media marketing. I'm a girly pop kind of world.
Yeah.
So it's definitely for me. Yeah.
I can fully imagine you as a presenter somewhere. So put that out there in the world.
I know, maybe like the Olympics in 2032. I'll get that gig or something like that.
For sure. The other thing that I really wanted for you to share with our listeners is this idea of overcoming obstacles and I guess dealing with disappointment, and really the resilient mindset that you need to have in order to overcome when things just don't happen the way that you want them to. Because, I grew up as like a swimmer. I was never interested in going to the Olympics. I entertained it for, I guess, a little bit, but I knew how hard people had to work in order to become a professional athlete in swimming, and I guess in like springboard it's a similar thing. But it's like when you literally dedicate your entire life to something and then you think it's so close to happening and it falls short, that is huge. So what I'd really love is for you to, I guess, tell us a short timeline of the last couple of years, like how I really want you to paint a picture for us of what goes into preparing for Commonwealth Games, Olympic trials, all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge commitment. And, like I said, I've been doing this since I was 10 years old. And I think I wrote in the Vogue article, potentially not word for word, but very close. It's like when your dreams are as big as the Olympics, they have a way of becoming a part of you, as integral as breathing or your heart beating. And that really is how it feels. Ever since a young age, my entire life has been ultimately consumed by this. As soon as I figured out that I was pretty good at it and, had a shot of doing this seriously. But I did also learn early on that, even winning an Olympic gold medal, that doesn't make you rich and that doesn't set you up for life. You need to have that balance and have support kind of outside of the pool. So not only was I kind of training 30 hours a week from a very young age, but I also took my schooling and my education really, really seriously. My mum is also a deputy principal, so it was kind of something, education has always been really valued in my family personally, but it definitely made the workload a lot more intense. And having to balance 30 hours a week of training and then driving. We lived out of Ipswich at the times and I went to school and trained in Brisbane. So driving 4 hours a day and then doing a full-time year. It was more when you get to year 10, 11, 12 and you're wanting to do well and get that good, I guess it's ATAR now. It does become a lot. And I think the second thing is it's also not just a commitment from me, but it's kind of a whole family commitment. And I did touch on that in the article as well. My siblings did have to move schools so that we could be closer to my training location. And, my mum had to kind of go back to full-time work. And there's a lot of sacrifices. And I think that's also the hardest part about eventually, in my case this year, not quite making the team is I didn't feel like I was diving just for me. I felt like I was diving for me plus my entire support network. And I mean, they don't really care. They're just as heartbroken as me. They're not they're upset, but not only for me. They don't think about the sacrifices they've made along the way. But I mean, I definitely do. And I definitely say that to people who are interested in getting their kids into elite sports. I'm like, it's not just your child, it's a whole family commitment.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people forget sometimes. So it's pretty intense. And then, obviously I graduated year 12 and had performed quite well in school. So I had the flexibility of deciding kind of what I wanted to study at university. But I guess the hard part was I had only done the minimum amount of subjects throughout year 11 and 12. So I'd done, maths, English. I went to a religious school, so study of religion, geography, and I think biology, one science. So I never really got to explore what it was that I didn't like. So I kind of was very fortunate to get a university scholarship at QUT and was thrown into having to pick something to study and having no idea what I wanted that to be.
How did you choose then? Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, I changed degrees a handful of times, actually. So I initially started with interior design. And while that's something I do really still enjoy, probably more interior decorating than design. Design is very...
my sister is an interior designer and it's not what people think. It's
very aligned with the architecture side as well.
Yes, it is.
And while I loved that, and I actually think I potentially would have kept pursuing that if I wasn't an athlete, that university degree is very full on. It's very hands on. It requires a lot of at university kind of placement hours. And that's just not something I could commit to alongside sport full time. So I then made the jump to doing journalism full time, which again, I really loved, but it felt a little bit too intense of a lifestyle that I wanted because obviously I was doing this really intense thing, sport, full time. And I was like, I just want to be able to, when I leave my sporting career, go into something that, is really, I'm passionate about and want to pursue. I obviously have that athlete drive in me, but I didn't want it to feel too heavy.
Yeah.
And kind of with the way the world was going, it felt very heavy. So I ended up then finally switching to and balancing a double major with journalism and media communications. So, and that's what I ended up graduating with. So
amazing. Okay. So, I mean, lucky you did because I think we all wanted to be journalists when we were in high school, right? But that's kind of...
it's that Andy Anderson kind of vibe. That was definitely my inspiration. And I was like, this is not real life.
No. And like newspapers and magazines kind of like disappeared a bit to a point from like the major players. And look, you still ended up in Vogue.
I know. I was like, oh, my second dream achieved. It was so funny actually though, when he commented on my video and was like, I mean, I know what's a bigger deal to me, being in Vogue than being in the Olympics. And it was funny because my best friend came up to me and was like, yeah, I kind of wanted to comment that too, but I wasn't sure if I should. She's like, I'm so glad someone else did. And I was like, I know, I loved it. I was like, it's so accurate. Like you all grew up wanting to be Andy Anderson or something like that. So to actually get published in Vogue was just another dream kind of ticked off the list. So
100%. I mean, I always put my foot in my mouth. So that's what I do. But when you first got the news, because I know you do talk about the disappointment in the article, but when you first got the news of missing out, like how do you overcome the next few days? Because I know we connected on Instagram literally just around that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was wondering to myself, like, how it's obviously you go through all the stages of grief, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks different for everyone. For me, with our selection process, in my event, the top 2 athletes got nominated to the Australian Olympic Committee. So they get nominated, but it's not finalized until a couple of days later. But there's not really any reason that the top two who are nominated wouldn't be finalized. It would be something very rare or extreme. So you pretty much know straight away as soon as the competition's over, I guess, that your Olympic dream for that year is over. So it was very difficult. Our qualification kind of went over 3 rounds. So in each round, you compete 5 dives. So it's 15 dives total. And even though it's separated into 3 rounds, it's the top 2 who have the accumulated score at the end. So the total of all of your 15 dives combined.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very nervous going into the first round. I think because this was the first year that the Olympic Games was actually very, very realistic for me and something that I'd been working really hard for a long time. And I knew I could do it. I know it was well within arm's reach. And while it wasn't going to be easy because my event in Australia is so competitive, I knew I was more than capable of getting that spot. So I went into the first round very, very nervous, and I did kind of hold it together, but I did still underperform to the level that I would like to. And then something kind of happened in the second round where I don't remember a lot. I almost feel like I blacked out. Like I remember not feeling as nervous in the second round as the first round, but it's kind of like I had so much adrenaline that I'd lost a little bit too much going into the second round. I'd come down off the hill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I couldn't pick it back up, but with the quick turnaround in between competitions. And I actually fell, I think it was 24 points behind the girl who was in second place. And pretty much from that moment, I was like, it's over, because we are kind of all equally as good as each other, the girls in second, third, fourth, fifth. And it was really about what was just happening on the day. I was like, that's kind of it. It's over. It's very difficult to make up 24 points in one competition. I went home and I just cried for like 5 hours and still had to get the courage together and the nerve together to compete again the next day, basically knowing that I wasn't going to qualify for the Olympic team. And that was the heartbreaking moment for me. It was actually midway through the competitions, but I kind of pulled myself together and went out the next day and I was like, look, you're done. There's no way you're making it. So just go have fun, try and show off all the hard work, do one really good round. And even though you're not going to make it, you're going to prove like, hey, I'm still showing up. I'm still proving that even though I didn't get it this time, I was worthy of getting it, essentially. And I pretty much did just that. I dove to the standard that I'd been training to and scored a score that I kind of would expect myself to score at this level of competition. And I did catch up 23 and a half points, but just not 24, which is pretty hard.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. So I think, I was diving before the girl who beat me, and my coach pulled me aside. I did my final dive. I think I did it for straight 8s out of 10s, which is pretty good. We consider that a pretty good dive. And he said, you were 0.3 points ahead of the girl who got second going into the last dive round. So I was actually ahead. I was in second place going into the last round. And basically she just hipped me. She finished with her best dive at the end as well. And, she did all 8s plus 1 8.5. So that's it. It's all over. But, I think what actually crushed me was about that 30 seconds of hope that I had that was, oh my goodness, I've come back from 2 of the worst competitions I've done in years to qualify at this Olympic spot. And I can't believe I've done it. She's really got to do something incredible to beat me now. And that's exactly what she did. She did something absolutely incredible because she's also an amazing, amazing athlete and an amazing person as well, So yeah. I think it was that 30 seconds of hope that really got me because
the roller coaster of emotion. Like that's insane. It was the roller
coaster. Yeah. So, I think once it had sunk in that I wasn't going again, the hope spiked up for about 30 seconds to a minute and then it crashed all the way back down again. Yeah, I just started sobbing. But, the diving community is so strong and so close knit. So I had so many people coming up to me immediately. The 2 girls who beat me coming up to me, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was like, it's fine. We're all just trying our best out here, trying our best. So, and I'm stoked for them as well because I'm really good friends with both of the girls who have qualified to go. So equally sad for me as happy for them. So but I mean, that's the nature of sport. You know what you're signing yourself up for. And even though it is grueling and it does suck sometimes, you have to be prepared for that possibility that you're going to train for years and years and not make it. And it's not just happened to me, it's happened to so many athletes out there because, I think I've had probably over 200 athletes message me on Instagram, just following the article being saying thank you so much for putting into words what I couldn't, but this is exactly how I was feeling. And I just want you to know you're not alone. And yeah, basically just thanking me for publishing it and letting people know kind of what it's like. So I think it was kind of, I think I said, it's making lemonades out of lemon, kind of sharing that experience and connecting with athletes all over the world who are going through a similar thing.
I'm literally like on the edge of tears every time you start talking about this stuff. I'm just so inspired with like how you can dedicate basically your entire teenage and adult life to something. And obviously, let's just be clear, it's not over. We've got the next Olympics to prep for, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have decided to commit myself to another Olympic cycle. I did consider retirement for about, 5 minutes there, but just because, now that I'm in my mid-20s, I turned 25 a week ago and of course had my midlife crisis. So
quarter life crisis. Yeah.
There's so many things to consider as you get into kind of your mid-20s if you want to continue pursuing a serious athletic career. Like I said, Olympic sports don't get paid. So I do get paid a small amount, but it's definitely not enough to live. It kind of roughly estimates out to about $200 a week. So it's really not a lot. And yeah, that's not even enough to cover, a rent these days.
So how do you keep going towards this goal? Because what I really want to put into perspective for people is this idea of like the sticking power behind things, and the fact that if like something I've discovered in my own life is that simply by not quitting, that is where success comes from. It doesn't come from these big grand gestures of big things. It's just like doing the same thing for a really, really long time. So how do you, because I'm imagining there's early mornings, there's late nights, you don't want to go to the pool. Like I know from when I was a teenager swimming, like, so how do you keep going?
There are the occasional breakdown for sure. Like that does happen.
Mentee bees.
Absolutely. Mentee bees do happen along the way. But I think it's like you said, people always talk about this kind of overnight success, and I don't really believe in that. Maybe in very, very rare instances, but I think majority of overnight successes are years and years of work, but just behind the curtain. And yeah, I of course, there's so many days I wake up and I don't want to go to training, because physically putting yourself, through 5 hours a day of intense performance-based training is really difficult. And think of all the times you wake up and just don't want to work out in the morning. I'm on break now and I've barely been working out at all. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm having my sleep ins and taking my time. But I think if you have a goal, for me, it's the Olympics, but for, people listening, it could be anything, starting a business, getting a promotion, whatever that is. But it does take time and chipping away at it and dedication. And yeah, I think if the goal is important enough to you, keep pursuing it, because for me, I think my measure of success has been redefined as well. If I looked back at when I returned to diving, I did take a break from it for a couple of years, maybe 3 years ago. And when I returned, I wanted to make a world championship final and I wanted to go to the Olympics. And if I look back, I actually had probably 5 major goals and probably only achieved 2 of them. So if I was looking at success the way I used to think of it, I would say huge failure, didn't do what I wanted to do. But I definitely still look at this experience. And even though I haven't made or qualified for, my dream this year and going to the Paris Olympics, I think of the person I've become along the way and the kind of values I've developed. And I'm so much more hardworking, smart working as well, dedicated, just an overall more understanding person as well than I ever was before. I used to have this mentality that because I'd been doing the sport for so long, it owed me something. Like nobody owes you anything ever. And I just think that's something I really strongly believe in now. And, if I'm pursuing this because I want to, and that doesn't mean I'm guaranteed anything at the end, but I think you have to look at success as the person you become along the way of trying to pursue something really, really difficult. And I think that's where my mindset has shifted, and it does make it easier to keep going back, because I know that I'm going to keep growing as a person. And that's kind of where I put my focus now. And whatever comes with that along the way is like a cherry on top, really.
100%. I love that so much. It's from like a business perspective, and that's how I see things as well. It's these obstacles that we have. Like I think when we're younger and before we go through it all, we think we just want that end goal. We want that end result and hurry up and let me get there. But it's like, as corny as it sounds, it is actually the journey. And it is actually the obstacles are there because you have to become the person that can deal with those obstacles in order to get to the end goal. And then you realize the end goal doesn't actually mean a whole lot anymore.
No, that's exactly what I mean. You know, people are assuming right now that I would be absolutely devastated, can't leave my bed. And I probably was like that for 3 days, you know. But
and that's fine. Like, have the pity party and feel the emotion and
but I am devastated and I'm heartbroken, but it does kind of feel like heartbreak. It kind of feels like a breakup where it just kind of is achy and it's sitting there, but each day it's getting a little bit better. And I think it's because I've redefined, I guess, my measure of success. And even though, yes, the huge goal was unsuccessful, I don't feel like it was an unsuccessful journey in the last 3.5 years, this campaign that I've done to try and get there. You know, I did still tick off some big goals of mine. I went to the World Championships for this event. You know, I made a World Championship final. While it wasn't in the event I originally anticipated it to be, I did still do that. I think being flexible as well and being adaptable is such a huge skill, and definitely one that I try to take into all aspects of my life, you know, sport, work, social, family, even.
Yeah. So the mornings you don't want to get up and go to the pool, especially I can imagine in Melbourne where it's cold. Like Sydney was hard enough, but like Melbourne, I can only imagine. It's like the mornings you don't want to do that. And like coming back from literal heartbreak, like sporting heartbreak and all that, do you have any practical tips, or like, are there any strategies or mindset strategies that you use to just kind of get out of, like, keep moving forward?
Yeah, I definitely think of, the first one I do is I think of future me. You know what I mean? Which is very typical, and I know everyone does that, but I think you sporting people take for granted how much visualization that you guys do, because because it's actually not a normal thing that people do in life. And I'd love for you to tell us more about all of that. It is ingrained in us to visualize from a young age. And it actually was something I really, really struggled with when I was a junior athlete, or like, you know, a teenager, because I always just visualized bad outcomes in everything. And it took a lot of time and a lot of, I guess, brain training and dedication to change that and start to visualize a positive outcome. And again, like visualizing that positive outcome, as much as it's sucky, it doesn't mean that it's always going to happen, but you are doing the small steps that are going to make it more likely that it is going to happen. So that's kind of my mindset about things. Like, you're not guaranteed it, but, you know, me visualizing being where I want to be, you know, whether that's in a broader aspect. So I'm visualizing myself at, you know, the 2028 Olympic Games now, or visualizing myself at the World Championships next year, or even more specific, visualizing a specific dive that I compete, and feeling that dive in my body is kind of like doing extra reps every day without putting my body through the physical stress. So
talk me through exactly like what this process looks like. So if you were to explain to me, okay, Maddy, this is how you're going to visualize your success, how am I doing that? Like, is this something your coach has taught you, or where do you guys learn this?
Yeah, for me, I work with a sports psychologist. So I am very grateful to have access to those services for free through kind of the level of athlete I am through the AIS. So we do get support services for nutrition, sports psychology, physio, medicine, and strength and conditioning. So very, very grateful to have access to all those services. And I know that not everyone does. So I am grateful that, you know, I do get that support. But basically, that's kind of the way. I didn't really believe in visualization to the extent that I do now until my new sports psychologist I've been working with for about 2 years. You know, I decided to change sports psychologist, and I just clicked with my new one, and she's awesome. And she said, you know, for me, she started it with a really practical sense with my competition dives, and I wanted to get better at doing them under stress. She's like, you need to visualize yourself and feel that dive in your body when you're stressed. So bring yourself up, you know, sit down, close your eyes, imagine yourself at a competition, you know, smell the chlorine, hear the sounds around you, hear, you know, the buzzer of they buzz like this little buzzer before we do our dive to let us know it's safe to go. And then visualize yourself doing that dive. And she's like, the more you're doing that, the more while you're not in a competition, the more you're practicing putting your body under that stress. And the more I did it, while I did keep showing up to competitions, and obviously I'm still so nervous, but I felt like I was nervous but had control of those situations more because I had visualized myself being in them more. And while it was kind of scary to start the whole visualization process, I do feel like it's helped me so much. So I kind of started really, really practical with visualizing specific competition dives. And then I kind of grew that into, okay, now I'm going to visualize myself just qualifying for that team. And like, what am I going to do to get there, and visualizing each little aspect. So practically with my visualization, I kind of do it not 3 times a day always. I'll do it 3 times a day, getting closer to a big event. So like when I went to World Championships last year, maybe the month leading up to the World Championships, I would dedicate or carve out more time in my day to do visualization. But it was literally just 5 minutes a day, 3 times a day. So when I wake up, I'll have my coffee and then just close my eyes and visualize for 5 minutes. And I kind of do it with each meal. So lunch and then like dinner or just before I go to bed. And that was just little pockets of time I carved out for myself to do that. But now I kind of do it once a day. If I'm in off season, I do build it up as I move towards more important things. But at the moment, because I'm on a break from sport and I'm taking a little hiatus to rest my body, I'm doing a lot of visualization around, this marketing business that I want to build and the freelance kind of stuff that I want to do to support myself for when I go back to sport. So it can be applied in so many different aspects of your life. It doesn't just have to be one.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. Yeah. I was going to ask, so like, do you apply this to your marketing business?
Yeah. Again, it's something that I've only kind of done more recently, maybe in the last year or so.
What are you visualizing now, for example?
It's going to sound so cringe.
No, it's like not.
Visualizing certain types of clients that I want to work with, or visualizing me. Say there's like a dream client, not anyone too big, because obviously I'm just a freelancer. So I'm taking baby steps, baby bites, but visualizing myself, say like managing a photo shoot or a campaign for them, visualizing myself being there, being around their team. You can get an insight through social media into people's businesses these days. Say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that's relatable to like if you want to work at Mecca, go to Mecca's social media and visualize. You will see everything you need to see to visualize yourself being there. You'll have the faces of certain team members in your face, a store layout, whatever it is. Like you can visualize yourself in that moment these days. There's so many great tools to kind of help with that. So as silly as it sounds, I've really been utilizing it to try and grow my business. Or even if it's at the moment, because like I said, I'm taking a break, I'm kind of renovating the website I had because it just wasn't kind of up to scratch for where I wanted it to be, but I've been a little bit time poor with the Olympic prep. So now if I'm feeling unmotivated to renovate my website, I'll visualize how I'm going to feel once it's done. And then it kind of motivates me to sit down and, chip away at a little bit that day and keep working on it. So it's pretty powerful.
That is so powerful. This is what I mean, people. These like athletes, I think like as a non-athlete, we see little snippets of things like athletes use visualization for their success. But I don't think until I've spoken to you, I didn't realize like it's 3 times a day leading up to a comp type thing. Like it is
and that's actually not everyone, that's just me specifically. Everyone would be different. Like even my partner, he's a diver as well. And he does it more than 3 times a day because that's what works for him. If I do it more than 3 times a day, I find that it kind of goes into the opposite effect. I get a little bit drained by it, but he is a very logical kind of person. So it just works for him and it doesn't drain his energy. So he does it maybe like 5 times a day, but 3 minutes instead of 5. So you're kind of doing the same amount, but he'll do smaller bite-sized chunks. And I think it can be different for everyone. It doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all model. I just don't think that that's realistic, but it's kind of like what you said, I don't want people to think that this is an easy skill to adopt. And like you do have to take your time and have patience with it because like I said, I spent years where I could visualize and only visualize bad outcomes.
How did you overcome that? Because I'm sure that's a huge problem for people.
Yeah, I think for me it was, there was a lot of fear with visualizing a good outcome because I was worried about
jinxing
getting attached. Yeah, like almost jinxing it or getting attached to the feeling that came with that and then potentially failing. It was a fear of failure that was holding me back. But once I kind of came to realize that failure is going to exist whether I'm scared of it or not, it became a lot easier to be like, okay, I might still fail, but I'm going to visualize the best outcome because it is going to put me in a better position for that outcome to be a positive one. And like, yeah.
I feel like as well, yes, you're 100% correct. I also feel, however, you have reframed what failure means. A lot of the time I find when people are afraid of failure, it's because they're afraid of what it then says about who they are as a person.
Yeah,
whereas I feel like, yeah, you've really, like Georgia, you've been able to really detach yourself from outcomes. You've been able to detach your self-worth from the outcomes. And that's why we're sitting here right now and you're talking so positively and you had an article in Vogue because it's like somebody who is still wrapped up with this idea of like, if I don't make the Olympics, that means I'm a failure. They're going to still be holed up in bed. Yeah, but for you, It's like, well, no, it's just, this is a lesson I need to learn and I'm going to make some fucking lemonade. I'm going to get myself into Vogue. I'm going to like focus on this other aspect of my life because I am inherently worthy no matter what I do or what outcome is delivered.
Yeah. And it's kind of like my coach and I sat down, not immediately after my competition, but, a week or two after. And I kind of, he's like, how are you going? I'm like, I'm doing okay, actually, because I think I'm not a huge what ifs person. That's just not me. And I'm so happy if people are. But for me, it doesn't work for me as well. So I said to him, I was like, I'm really trying to embody this, but like I mentioned before, I kind of only ticked 2 out of those 5 major goals I had for myself off my list. What if having this huge failure of my biggest dream, now going into the next Olympic cycle, I'm going to be so like badass and so going for it because the biggest thing it was the last Olympic cycle was sometimes I would hold back because I was scared of failing. And that would actually cause me to underperform. And that happened at a lot of major competitions for me. And I'm like, I think now that I've failed at my biggest dream and I'm still here and I'm okay, I'm just going to go so badass the next Olympic cycle and go so for it because I just think like I've already failed at the biggest thing I could possibly fail at in terms of me working towards the biggest goal I've ever wanted to achieve. And like, I'm here, I'm fine. Yeah, it sucks a little bit, but like, I'm still breathing. My life's still good. I've got great people around me. So yeah, I just think, I don't know, what are you supposed to do? Like sit and be miserable about it? I don't know. No, I don't wish I was that kind of person, but like, I just think you've got to kind of get up and try again. Or, I think I touched on in my article to the athletes retiring, or say there's a big goal you want to achieve and like you've decided I've dedicated enough time. I want to move on from this and maybe focus on something else. So it's like, walk away with your head held high for what you were trying to do and for the effort that you put in. And that, again, it becomes about the journey, not about the outcome, because you're not always going to get the outcome. But yeah, I think what you do along the way is way more important.
100%. I love that so much. It's like, because you could look at it this way, as I'm not a big what if person either, but it's like, what if you did qualify, but you still hadn't learnt that lesson of not holding back? You get to the Olympics, you completely fuck it up. Like, that's like
a possibility.
It's because you didn't learn that lesson. This time around, you felt the worst pain that you were afraid of, right? You've felt that. You've had the biggest disappointment. And so and you've come out smiling on the other end of it. So it's like, there's nothing left to lose for me, which is the most powerful position you can be in. And I know that feeling myself because for me, I had 2 biggest fears for a very long time. One was not meeting my potential. The other was reaching my goals and then having them taken away from me, which was for me, financials drove a lot of my goals, right? Now,
like when you have a family, 100%,
but it wasn't even about, for me, it was what does it was really my income defined my worth, right? I was so tied up in that. And so I hit that point where I had this bigger team. Was making the goal amount I wanted to make each month. And then it all fell apart and I lost it all. And I ended up not paying myself a wage. I ended up going into debt in my business. Literally the worst shit that I was scared of happened, but it happened. And guess what? I'm so grateful that it happened because I've become such a better person from it. And it's like now I feel you. Like I'm not holding back with things I want to do because it's like I've felt the worst pain.
Yeah. And I think I've had experiences where I was getting little glimpses of that lesson. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, I don't know how much longer I can emotionally do this. Like this is what I'm talking about, the mentee beats happen. I don't know how much longer I can do this and not start to see some kind of return on the effort that I'm putting in, whatever that looks like. But I think, once I had the big failure, which was obviously not making the team this year, all of a sudden it's like I got this whole thing of clarity. I'm like, it was never about those big goals I wanted to achieve. You know what I mean? I'm a completely different person than I was when I came back to the sport 3 years ago, and for the better, I like to think. And that's served me, in the pool, but also out of the pool. And I don't know. I also think with like the fear of failure thing, I was so scared of other people's judgment as well with a lot of things. And this is applied to a lot of areas, like not making the Olympics. Oh my God, people are not going to think I'm a good athlete anymore. People are going to think, she's not good enough to make it or whatever. Like, it's so funny when you take a step back and it's like everyone's so wrapped up in their own lives. Like nobody cares, actually. They might think about it for 2 seconds. They'll be like, oh, that's really sad. She didn't make the team, or, oh, she didn't make the team, even if it's in a judgy way. And then they're going to move on and get along with their lives and probably not think about it again very often. And I just think once I had come to that realization as well of why am I letting other people hold me back from trying to do things? Because realistically, the ones that are being really judgy aren't really worth your time anyway, in my opinion.
100%.
So,
I agree. It's always people that are like, someone that's doing better than you or like further along the journey than you will never think or say bad things about what you're trying to do because they were once there. I found it's always the people that are like not below you. I don't know the word, but it's
stuck. They're stuck. Yeah. They're too scared to try anything. They end up, doing the same thing, which like isn't fun. A lot of people can be satisfied with that. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that's what you want.
Yes.
But if you are just judging other people because you're too scared to try something, then I just think if you're worried about what those people think of you, like they're not even worth your time,
No. And I don't feel like any of our listeners are these types of people, but if you have a reaction to someone or if someone has a reaction to you where they're like happy that you failed, the schadenfreude, or if they're like judging you for like showing up on social media or doing whatever it is you're doing, it is actually a reflection on them. It is actually, 100%. It is more enlightening for what that literally says is they actually wish they could do what you're doing or do something like what you're doing. But to take joy in someone not reaching their goal, that's just them making an excuse like, see, it's not safe for me to try because this shit happens. Yeah, or if 100%. It's like, who does she think she is going on social media, going on Vogue? Like, who does she think she is? And
I can guarantee you there'd be people who were thinking that when I published the article. Like, I definitely know a handful of people who probably were like, who does she think she is? But you know what? Like, all of the great positive responses and feedback and, I had this young girl, even this one message, this young girl messaged me being like, I hope you know that even though, in my eyes, even though you think you're part of the Almost Olympian Club, you're a part of the Women Who Inspire Young Girls Club or something. And that one message just,
I'm going to cry,
completely, obliterated any concerns I had about people judging me for writing the article or, wanting the article to be published. Because if I can change that one young girl's, perspective on it's okay to give things a go and fail, then I've done my job as an athlete, as a senior athlete. Even if it's just one, I hope, it's more than one. I hope I can inspire more than one. But I just think, the people who are wasting their time judging you they've got bigger fish to fry and bigger things to deal with. And
Yeah.
they're just not worth your time.
100%. 100%. So let's talk about marketing for a little bit. So
Yes.
the reason we connected is because I was just doing what I do and go through some of my followers, and I just reached out and said, hey.
Hey, I think I went to Bistro C in Noosa and you were like, I love that place.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Like,
yeah,
yes, me too.
I was like following, I was kind of going through and I'm like, oh, yeah, and just like to engage with people who follow me because I feel like that's something that people should do, right? And then you were like, oh, yeah, like I listened to the podcast and I was just like, but you're a diver. Why? So
I love this podcast. I'm a fan for like a long time now.
Yay. So tell me, like, what is it about how we do marketing basically? Like, have you applied any of our learnings into how you're working with your clients? Like, talk us through, like, what's your marketing process look like?
Yeah. So I'm still building it because I was working for a media agency. I've worked for like, 2 in my past, and they have been great and I've really enjoyed them, and they've been super, super flexible with my training. Like, I could not fault them. They're great people. But I was managing, say, like 11 to 15 clients on a part-time basis.
Shit.
And I just know that you can't, like, I wasn't giving these clients the best that I could with my knowledge. And I thought I could go out as a freelancer and really kind of make a difference to these people's businesses and their marketing efforts, and basically invest more time, have fewer clients, but invest more time into each one. And that's kind of what I've done. I only have a small handful right now. I have 4, but I'm enjoying working for them so much because it is that athlete thing in me. You always want to do the best and you always want to show up and, try and give the best service or that you can. And I feel like I can sit here now and say, I am doing that. I'm trying my best to better their business and better their outcomes. And yeah, I kind of do a wide range of things from, just basic social media management to digital marketing if they want it, depending on their budget and their goals. That's something I've really taken on from, I think, Birdcage, is kind of what I said before, being flexible and adaptable and kind of making it right for the client. And also something else I said was that you guys said was that the client has to work for you. And I think that's something I have turned down a few people who have asked me to do their marketing because I just knew that, say, social media marketing was their last resource and they were going to be putting everything into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to this podcast and you saying, like, you cannot work with people who do that because they'll never be satisfied and they will always have something to be unhappy with and they'll always want more and they'll take more than kind of they're paying you for. And I have turned down people based on that just because I knew that
it's a red flag.
Really help those people. It's a red flag. So yeah, so many small and big things taken away from this, even if it's stuff that, say, like the marketing pyramid, I was using
The funnel.
Yeah, sorry, pyramid funnel. That's my uni brain being like, you're taught a pyramid. The funnel, like I was doing a version of that, but to hear it and then be like, okay, what I'm doing is right. Like having that solidified and then being able to expand on that and build on that even more has been so helpful. Like, I think just always wanting to expand your knowledge. If you can, like, listening to this podcast for me was something, I was spending an hour a day in the car driving to and from training. Like, what way can I better myself in that hour? Listening to a podcast that is going to expand my knowledge, but also is enjoyable to listen to. Like, you're not boring. You've got a great personality. I quite enjoy the bluntness of the podcast. I'm obsessed with that because I'm a little bit like that as a person too. I'm not about being wishy-washy. I'm like, just give it to me straight. What can I do better?
Yeah.
Or, so yeah, that's what I've really enjoyed from it and really gotten out of it.
Yeah. I think I don't know, doing sports, like, it does make you always think of self-improvement. As I said, like I was by no means even close to being an Olympic anything, but my mom, like, I played sport every single day and swimming was a huge part of our lives for a very long time. And I'm the same. It's like, I literally have 20 minutes between school drop off and coming back to the office where I'm like, what podcast am I listening to? Like, how can I spend this 20 minutes? You know, who do I call to like get a head start on the day? It's like, it's never just chill, but maybe that's something we need to learn to.
No. I mean, I definitely have to force myself to like take time to switch off. My mum is a total workaholic and I get that from her. And while that is great in some regards, you know, I'm very productive, I get things done, but you do also have to take time to switch off. Not every car ride is a podcast, but if I'm feeling motivated, which I'm assuming a lot of people listening to this are, because if you're already listening to this podcast, you're probably already a go-getter and you want to improve yourself and be kind of on that journey in whatever you're coming to this podcast for. So yeah, I just think those little things, they all add up, and that's those little things chipping away the long-term dedication. Even something as simple as that can really make a difference in the long run. Yeah,
for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you. I feel like we've covered so much and I didn't even know where this was going to go 100%, but I feel like there was so much value that can be derived, not just from hearing your story, but also about, you know, the tools and the techniques that you use as an elite athlete, but then also seeing how you're translating that into business as well. And I have a very sneaking suspicion that I feel like you've got a big media career ahead of you.
Thank you.
I can really picture you, whether that's through socials or whether it's more through traditional television or what it might be. I feel like you are 100% in the right place. So
thank you. Yeah, it feels right. So I think you know when you know if you're in the right spot. And it might take a little bit of reshuffling. Maybe you got to try it.
100%. So tell us, if people want to follow more about you, where can they find you?
Yes, I am on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, although I do need to be a little bit better on TikTok. I need to take after Maddy here. She is the TikTok queen. I kind of come to it once every couple of months, but I'm going on holiday. So I feel like that's a nice way to ease back into TikTok.
Yes.
You know? So I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube. I do vlogs there occasionally, which is kind of fun, where I've like traveled for competitions or after competition holidays, and I'm kind of bringing that back for the holiday again. So going to watch my boyfriend at the Olympics vlog, which will be fun. Yeah. So my handle's just my name, really, Georgia Sheehan. But yeah, most of them have a double N on the end because the one N for Nelly was taken.
We'll link all of these in the show notes as well. But yeah, anything else? Any final words of wisdom?
No, just like, don't be afraid to give anything a go. It's so cliche. It really is. And just, believe in yourself as much as the people around you believe in you as well. So
love that.
Give it a go. I mean, we've both failed and we're fine. We're still here. We're still kicking it.
We're better off for it. Proud failures. Maybe that's the shirt that we need.
Yeah, we should really start to tagline this. We'll make a club or something.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Georgia. And we will definitely be following you along on your travels, but also I'm so excited to see what you do next.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.